Put your hands together for Brother Eric Frazier. Okay, I'm going to ask in this moment that we come back to center and that we focus our attention to the front of the room, which means that discussions and conversations, just for the moment, should cease so that we can finish this program. We good? We good? Of course we are. We Brooklyn. Again, I'm going to ask that everything be centered towards the front and that volume on voices be lowered so that we can have an effective presentation. We good? Good. Are we good? Good. Okay. It's my honor to call up to this mic next the Commissioner of Cultural Affairs for the City of New York. So Lori Cumbo was appointed as the Commissioner of Cultural Affairs for the City of New York by Mayor Eric Adams in March 2022. Lori Angela Cumbo previously served as Majority Leader in the New York City Council and represented the City Council's 35th District for 8 years. She wrote over 40 laws and resolutions in that role, including the creation of the first ever Mayor's Office to End Gun Violence and the Mayor's Office of Victim Services. Cumbo focused her career on institution building and worked diligently throughout her tenure in the City Council to secure permanent cultural homes for the Noel Pointer Foundation, Ifatayo Cultural Arts Center, and the West Indian American Day Carnival Association, among others. Prior to her time in City Council, Cumbo founded Mokata in Brooklyn and previously worked at the Metropolitan Museum of Art, the High Museum, and the Brooklyn Museum, as well as the Brooklyn Children's Museum. At Mokata, Cumbo was instrumental in expanding the museum to a newly renovated space at the James E. Davis 80 Arts Building in Fort Greene, Brooklyn, and pushed to build a multi-million-dollar state-of-the-art museum into its new home in the BAM South Building in partnership with BAM. Cumbo is a lifelong Brooklynite. She's a Technite like myself. She graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in Art History from Spelman College and a Master of Arts degree in Visual Arts Administration from New York University. Please focus on the front and put your hands together for the Commissioner of Cultural Affairs, my sister Lori Cumbo.
We have to continue in Bedford-Stuyvesant to make sure, do you know how revolutionary it is in the so boldly and profoundly. We are going to make sure that here at Restoration, this continues to be a mecca for Black cultural exchange. We have no shoe downstairs. There's no pointer here. There's Ron Brown dance evidence. There are so many cultural institutions. You've got the Skylight Gallery. We have to make sure that we work in partnership to make sure that this vision continues. We, as Minister Farrakhan says, always start your idea with the believers. The believers are in this room. But if we don't reach out further to the community, if we don't reach out to Marcy houses, Walt Whitman houses, Farragut houses, Marcus Garvey houses, Payne houses, if we don't bring our community in here, this will be a lost opportunity. So the next time we come, the way we are coming, make sure you bring the youth with you. We have to bring our young people here and wherever we go, because we got to pass this legacy to the next generation. They have to understand the sacrifices that have been made. So on behalf of Mayor Eric Adams, we are honored to open our doors with you today. There is so much more, and I saw this space in February. This space did not look like this in February. If you have ever wanted to stand inside of a miracle, you are standing inside of it right now. Rodney Leon, you did your thing. Rodney Leon has continued to create African masterpieces. You've seen his work at the African Burial Ground. You can see his work here. And there's so much more for him to do to come. So, I just want to tell you one thing in closing. Whatever talent you have, whatever creativity you have, whatever resources you have, this institution is going to need it. So please make sure you support financially. If you have a marketing firm, make sure you support. If you are nice on social media, make sure you promote whatever it is that you can do. Please make sure you do it. Thank you so much, Eric. Let's give Eric a round of applause. This is such a long time coming. This relationship here, we done had our ups and downs, our peaks and valleys, but we are here now. We continue to be united and we continue to support and continue to make sure our next generation is stronger. Thank you so much.
Lori, we've known each other for a long time, and we're going to work together to bring the best that we can to you, because you deserve it. To the community, my passion, my will.
Everybody, the man of the hour is speaking, and he has traveled too far and too long and spent too much money in customs bringing all of this back home to us, okay? So let's give him this one moment so that he can speak his truth and his vision to the community. Come on, everybody in the back. Eric Edwards is greeting the audience. Let me tell you, this is the moment he has waited for his whole life. Blood, sweat, tears, and a whole lot of losses along the way. People that should have been here today, that were part of this journey, are here in the spiritual realm, but not in the physical realm. He has endured so much financially, spiritually, emotionally, to be here because he knows that our community is stronger when we are connected to who we are and identify with who we are. So let's allow him this moment to be able to speak to you, because it's the work that you see here, the creativity, but it's also the vision behind making it happen. Give it up for Eric Edwards.
Supposed to close this out, but I think the appropriate time to speak is now, especially with my dear friend, and this very, 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 as you know, important lady, Lori Combo, that's a force in this city for good, and for culture, and for history, and for art. And I sort of come in on the side of the historical support, if you will, as far as the legacy to us and our beginnings of time in our contributions. That's what this space in this museum is about. It's about us and about what we were denied and the respect we weren't given when we were extracted and brought here for forced servitude for over 400 years. And my vision and my belief is to give as much back to you, the knowledge, not to indoctrinate or to prescribe a certain way of life or a reality for you, but to just give you the truth. And in the solid foundation which I was so fortunate to receive in my life from my parents, because they made sure I knew the truth as well as they knew it, as far as where I came from and what the forces of good that brought me into this world, and people before me and our ancestors, and how they contributed to make this world a great place it is. What we were, the problem is what we were denied, not knowing not being given that knowledge. And that took many of us right off the tracks. I was lucky because I always knew who I was. I mean, I went through the same racism and all this kind of stuff that all of us have faced in life, and knocks many of us down so we can't even get back up. That never happened to me. I was punched and kicked and knocked, but there was always something inside of me that said, whoever was directing that type of negative energy towards me, was always something in me that said, this person doesn't know who I am. He doesn't understand the history. He doesn't know how we're connected. He doesn't even know that he came from me. So it was that knowledge and that desire in me even to know more than I was taught. And that's what put me in on the track, the road to start collecting African artifacts. I was pretty successful in that because I knew who I was, and because I wouldn't be knocked out, and because I strived and learned to be the best that I could be at what I was. It was in technology. It wasn't in art. It was in technology. And the money I made in technology, I put back into art, into artifacts, into study, because I always wanted to know more about where I came from. Even though my father taught me a lot of things, I went further and learned things my father never knew. And I discovered the history of learning about self was through the artifacts. They can talk to you. They can tell you things, And the deeper you dig, the further you go and the more you learn. And it so enriched me that I realized at a certain point in life I had to give back. I had to give back to my own peers, my relatives, the young people that would follow me, the descendants. And I knew if I did that, even if a small part of that rubbed off, it would reinforce them, would make them stronger. It would give them the power and the base to excel. It's all about excelling. You see, when you look at what's in this room now, less than 3% of my collection, what you see universally, you don't have to know anything about African art. But what you see when you walk in the room is, what do you see? You see beauty. You see excellence. You see that if you realize anything, is that the person that sat down and made these artifacts, who carved them, who put pigmentation to them, And many of these, of course, you well know, were used in a spiritual context, you know. But what you learn is that the people who made these items, they believed in excellence. What they did to the best of their absolute ability, and they strive through others and teachers to learn the best that they could be in their particular trade and skill. And it was those skills that were on those slave ships where people were shackled and tied down and thought to be less than, and treated as less than human. It was that knowledge they still had in their heads, and those skills they still had in their brains and in their hands that they brought to this country. And it was the skills that made some of these artifacts that you see before you. And it was those skills that were utilized to make this country the greatest country in the earth.
That's right.
So never forget. So you see excellence. And the African ethos is about excellence. You know? So, and I benefited from that excellence, you know. So what the museum is for me, it's going to be a place of education. We have our own educational curriculum that puts voice to the artifacts, and they'll tell you who they are and why they're here and how they contributed. But it's also my give back to my community. I grew up in Bedford-Stuyvesant. I have to give back to Bedford-Stuyvesant. I love my childhood in Bedford-Stuyvesant, even when this wasn't the chic community that it is now with the multi-million-dollar brownstones and all of this. But what it was a community. It was a real community where people loved each other and protected each other. And even though the rest of the outside world, the outside community, called it a ghetto, you know, but to me it was no ghetto at all. I mean, it was a place I loved, and even when I go through the streets of Bedford-Stuyvesant now, they own many modern buildings and structures and so on and so forth. You know, I always feel sometimes something is missing. You know, it's that heart and soul isn't here anymore. You know, but what will be there is this museum. And this museum will help to reawake the mind to what we should be at least somewhat focused on. You know, and that will make us better, it will make us stronger, it will make others understand us more, and through the mutual understanding that all people that walk the face of this earth have contributed something and have contributed important things. And the issue has always been for me is that we weren't acknowledged to have been part of that. So this museum will, in its own small way and part, try to rectify something and try to educate all of us, not just people of African descent, but all of us. And there are many, and I have to say this, there are many very good people who believe in this museum and support this museum that are not of direct African descent. And because they believe what I believe in my discussions with them, and they help support us. And this museum will, in the end, promote mutual understanding and education and the sharing of the proper knowledge will instill those virtues of self-respect. And I believe that's the only thing that can make this a better world.
Now y'all gotta do better than that for me. Y'all gotta do better than that. On the count of three, I want y'all to yell at the top. lungs. Thank you, Mr. E. You got it? Did you hear me? Okay. 1, 2, 3. Thank you, Mr. E. Amazing. There is a couple of other voices that we want you to hear from before we leave this place with the spirit of continuing and moving forward. So I want to introduce to you guys the architect and the visionary artist for this institution, Mr. Rodney Leon. Now, Rodney Leon is the founder and principal of the Rodney Leon Architect PLLC. He has an architectural background as a designer on a diversity of building types in the United States and abroad. Mr. Leon has made the design of public spaces the focus of his professional career. Over the last 10 years, his architecture practice has developed an expertise in memorial design, sustainable urban development, and master planning. He's an advocate of cultural, contextual, contemporary design. Current projects include a memorial sculpture garden in DC, an enslaved African memorial in Teaneck, New Jersey, and a cultural museum of African art right here in Brooklyn, New York. Mr. Leon is most widely known for being the designer of the African Burial Ground Memorial in New York City, which is the first national monument in the United States dedicated to the contributions of people of African descent. Mr. Leon is also the winner of the international competition by the United Nations to design the permanent memorial to the victims of slavery and the transatlantic slave trade. Mr. Leon's winning entry, entitled The Ark of Return, was unveiled at the United Nations Plaza by Secretary General Ban Ki-moon on March 25, 2015. Put your hands together for the architect and visionary artist, Mr. Rodney Leon.
Thank you everyone for being here. It's really about Eric, and it's about the museum. It's about our collective heritage, our collective culture. If we're going to walk away today with at least one thing that we remember and then understand and acknowledge, is that, I've had the benefit of actually traveling to different countries, primarily in West Africa. And my most recent trip to Senegal in Dakar, I was able to visit 2 or 3 different beautiful museum structures that were developed recently. And one thing that caught my eye when I was getting tours of these structures, which were immense structures, contemporary structures, is the lack of African art that occupied these spaces. First and foremost, those buildings were constructed by people not from Africa, from China and from other countries. And within them, you had these grand halls, but you had very few artifacts. I had heard recently, and I'm not sure of the exact statistic, that over 90% of Africa's cultural heritage exists outside of Africa.
That is true.
So, when we go to places like the Metropolitan or the British Museum and places like that, we have to understand how those artifacts and how our heritage was extracted and taken from us. What is so extremely rare, so extremely precious about this place and this collection right now is that Eric has spent over a half-century collecting so many precious artifacts, rare artifacts. Many of the pieces here that you see are one of a kind. They don't exist anywhere. They're priceless. In addition to that we here in Bed-Stuy are in the presence of the only African art museum in New York City. Wow. Now think about that. If you probably Google museum right now in New York City, probably thousands of museums, right, pop up. You've got the museum of every kind of random thing you could possibly think of, right? Museum of hot dogs or whatever, right, in New York City. And we couldn't find the money and the time to structure in New York City an African art museum. And you're standing in it right now. Thanks for that. And one thing you also have to, I think we must acknowledge as well, is that in terms of this African heritage, people from royal families actually come to Eric because they trust him in order for them to dedicate some of these artifacts to place them in his hands. Because it's also the only African art collection that is managed and curated and collected by people of African descent. So, right? So there's so many people that are doing that, he doesn't even have enough space in order to receive some of the things. So this is an extreme blessing. So I want you all, I just wanted to say those things, that this space is here dedicated to the artifacts, is dedicated to Eric's legacy, and that there's so much that we can continue to do to build further, because again, it's only 3% of his collection. Imagine what we could do if we started to grow on top of that and build on top of that. So thank you all for being here today.
All right, so before we leave one another, we're gonna have last words, assembly member. And Eddie, where you at, Eddie? Where you at? You running around in the outfield, Eddie. Come on back on the plate. And Mr. Leon, yes.
Good evening, family. Good evening, good evening, good evening. So if I could have Mr. Edwards, Dr. Edwards, and Eddie Gardner, and Rodney Leon, and Miss Edie come to my side. We can line up the people. I need y'all to come closer, closer. Edie? Okay, absolutely. Come on over. Come on, Miss Edie. So I mentioned this earlier, but I really want you to look at this team. And usually, as a member of the New York State Assembly, you come and you have things that you are going to present. Today, I can only present my words because nothing can compare to what is already happened here today with these artifacts on display. But I want everybody to hear just how important you all are to the past, but the future of our legacy as a people. So in my official capacity as New York State Assembly, with the power invested in me, I hereby declare Dr. Edwards, Mrs. Edwards, Eddie Gadgeter, and Rodney Leon, the guardians of art and culture for the 56th Assembly. There is no greater title that I can bestow on you. Eddie talked about the late nights, but the camaraderie and the love of this family that's not connected by blood, but by history and by culture, is all that was necessary. And it comes again from an agape love for our people and each and every one of you. You gotta feel this, you gotta know this, you gotta understand this. They have worked tirelessly so that your grandchildren and your great-grandchildren will be proud of who they are. That they would walk in this place and see represented the lie that they have been told in institutions after institutions after institutions for their entire lives. You are standing in the truth. I need you to feel it, I need you to understand it, and I need you to bring your children. One of the reasons, and there's many, many reasons why I supported this effort, and so many of us have supported this effort, is because I was so inspired by his story. And as I told someone earlier, I kept the memory of what I had seen the first time in my mind. And so from moving from the council to the state senate, and now as an elected person, having the power that you all invested in me to provide the initial $1 million investment, and then a subsequent $375,000 investment was because I trust, and love these 4 individuals. People are not aware that Mr. E and I were harassed for an entire year by an individual who tried to convince me not to invest because these artifacts were fake. With no proof at all, he called and he emailed and he called. And I said, you will never, this is what has happened to us our entire existence in this country, and you will not we will rebuke the devil every time he shows up. And so today is the grand celebration because we are all here bearing witness to the truth. We are bearing witness to the truth. And so spend some time at each station. As Mr. Edwards says, listen to our ancestors. They are whispering to us. This is our time. This is our time to make space and take our space. Whether we're taking it back or we're just planting our toes 10 toes deep and saying this is ours. I respect my ancestors and I respect Mr. E, but I'm going to tell you, there's love in Bed-Stuy for families still. There's love in our children, for our children. And there is love in this space. And we only have to use our voice and act upon whatever vision individually and collective that we have. Because to tell the truth, that's all we ever had. You and I, each of us, community, collective, moving forward, persevering through all that people have thrown at us. But are we declaring that we should be recognized for all that we have contributed to this country and beyond? Somebody say Ashe and say yes. Are we in the justice-making business? Because today is about justice. Today we said, forget about all that you said we could not do. We did it.
Yeah.
And today is about the future as they're standing here. The development of our spaces, but development of our hearts, our minds, and the next generation. So I'm going to end it with that. Do not ever quiet your dreams. Do not ever let anybody quiet those voices inside of you. You have only to know that Mr. Edwards is pulling for you, and he is a living example of what you can accomplish when you step into your purpose. And so I ask that of each and every one of you, and let's continue to keep doing good work together. This is just the beginning. This is just the beginning. Thank you.
Oh, so y'all want me to go after that? You see how they treat me? Okay, I love this. I love y'all. We're going to end it with the sounds of the most dynamic cultural institution that caters to our youth in this community. Every time we call on this institution, they come in their own way, and their own way is significant and excellent. You're done hearing my voice. The next people you hear is a Sasaya. Put your hands together for a Sasaya. Thank you so much.